Tonight, Reel to Reel takes a look at summertime at a seashore parish.
And how some Christians are reaching out to victims of war.
We'll also see the Vatican art exhibit.
And meet a 107-year-old woman who keeps the faith.
Hello, I'm Sean Hughescamp.
And I am Monsignor Charles Minaw. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
You know, we like to think of hospitality as an American tradition. We invite people into our homes, into our churches, and into our communities.
But the long reach of hospitality is best exemplified in the life of St. Francis of Assisi. In developing his Christian context of following the life of Christ in the gospel narrative, he seems austere at times. But the one thing about Francis, he may seem austere, but he always wants you to be happy in serving God.
And to enjoy yourself while you're doing it. With the memory of summer past still fresh in our minds, we thought we'd show you a seaside parish that manages to meet people's spiritual needs while vacation time is still at high tide. For thousands of Delaware Valley families, vacations at the Jersey Shore are an annual event of sun and fun along the beach. While shore resorts and the beach often signify rest and relaxation, St. Francis of Assisi Parish on Long Beach Island has come to create that same relaxed feeling for its congregations as they expand in the summer with visitors and vacationers. St. Francis Parish is ministered by a team of Franciscans who strive for a sense of hospitality and community among all their Sunday worshipers. And Father Vince LeCursey explains his team's philosophy.
Community is an openness really to other people, to all kinds of people. And anybody that's got any sort of openness to others is basically a definition of hospitality, of welcoming, of saying, yeah, we may not see you forever and ever, but as long as you're here now, you're important to us, and your presence here is saying that you must have the same goals and the same faith that we do, and that's good, and we're glad to have as many people as possible together with us.
Before the start of Mass, a team member greets the people, rehearses hymns, and encourages vacationers to call out their hometowns and states. Then the people are asked to greet one another before praying together. Visitors later told me that this was a new and unusual experience for them.
It was an interesting experience. At the beginning of Mass, before everyone started, we just turned around and shook hands with different people that we didn't know. It wasn't a part of the Mass. It was just something before Mass just to get acquainted.
The homilies delivered by the friars often encourage the people to put their faith into practice, as the friars have done in their parish community center.
That we must be active, that we must do something with the raw materials of our life, that we've been given talents and joys and even hardship. And Christians are expected to do something with all of that, so that when the Son of Man does arrive, there's some product to show.
Language is used to stress the Franciscans' team message that the faithful should feel confident about their relationship with God. With subtle changes in the wording of the Mass, people come away feeling good about their faith.
The Lord is with you. The peace of the Lord is with you always. Believe that and offer it to your neighbor. Filled with faith and confident in God's promise, let us proclaim this mystery.
After Mass, several of the vacationers commented on their impressions of the friars' words and the Mass. Rob, you've been down here for several years during the summer. Can you tell me what you think of the Masses here?
I never get the feeling that they're just going through the motions here. I get the feeling that they're always trying to make it fresh and new, and I think they have fun with it, and so you can't help but be impressed with that when you walk out the door.
I'm always impressed with the Mass every time I come here, because you come in there, an outsider really, and you don't feel that way. With the Franciscans, it's just something beautiful.
That something beautiful extends up and down Long Beach Island, as St. Francis Parish encompasses 4 churches on the island, 3 of which close in the winter. The hub of activity all year round is in Brant Beach, where the St. Francis Center provides religious and lay people the opportunity to translate their teachings and prayers into an active communal faith. Father Owen McNally is administrator of the center.
So what we tried to do is come up with an idea that how can we build community, how can we find a place to help build community that will touch all the people of the parish. The programs that we have at the center are varied. We have educational classes, we have recreational classes, leagues, volleyball, basketball, soccer. We have counseling services. We have a senior citizen program, probably one of the best in the state, if not the best. We have a volunteer service, which with over 1,000 volunteers, not only from the parish, but from the community.
Volunteers that come to St. Francis Community Center come from all over.
Pat Campoli is the volunteer coordinator at St. Francis Center.
But over 1,700 volunteers participate in our program here at the center. About 40% of our volunteers are non-Catholic. We've had several handicapped people come into the parish center looking for things to do. We've been able to help them as much as they've been able to help us. For example, our babysitting program, we have 2 handicapped people that are working in there. They have helped us out tremendously. There is no pressure for these people due to the fact that the children are young.
The yearly Festival of the Sea is a fundraising fair almost totally dependent on volunteers to operate booths, supervise games, give out prizes, and at times simply give of themselves to bring a laugh or a smile to others. But more than just fun can be had by all through the St. Francis Center, where the Franciscan team is also concerned with the religious education of their community. The summer lecture series draws a number of people to the parish for weekday lectures, and Father David Convertino was one of this summer's speakers.
One of the reasons why the summer lecture series would draw people would simply be that they're possibly lacking that in their own parish, and that even though you are down here to go to the beach and to recreate and things like that, I think the way the courses are presented is something that's going to be not only educational but also fun and enjoyable to be in the class. The course that I'm offering on liturgy, I think hits a lot of people home when they come here, because they see one type of liturgy possibly here, and it's rather different than what they see when they're home.
The Franciscan Sunday message of Christian concern for others is brought to life in the center through the numerous self-help programs. Journey Through Grief fills some of the emptiness for people who have lost a loved one.
3 years ago, when my husband died, I was new in the area, and I had no one or no place to go to help me deal with my grief. So I approached one of the sisters at St. Francis and asked if we couldn't possibly form a group to help people with the problem I was having and work them through the grief process.
The St. Francis Center has given us an opportunity to really go through our journey by supplying the place and the help that we need to go through our journey normally and without being stuck in one of the stages of grief.
This Franciscan team and their parishioners have shown thousands of others that their community is more than just a relaxing escape to the shore by putting their faith to work every day. Do you ever consider the beach to be your competition?
No. I guess we never think of competition. You know, we're not out to compete with anybody. We are out, you might say, to try to help people to believe in themselves, to love themselves. If there's a need, we try to provide a program for the need. And I guess in terms of seeing the beach is a place I think that Francis would have loved. You know, Francis loved the ocean, he loved the seagulls and the sunrises and sunsets. And so I guess I see what we do as more a complement to the beach, that people can come down here, they're relaxed, and we can provide a certain relaxed spiritual dimension to their lives while they're here.
We had fun putting that story together, but St. Francis has a certain feel that is best experienced in person. So next summer, if you get a chance, visit St. Francis and see how parish life continues into the vacation season.
Stay with us for the rest of Reel to Reel. Coming up in Expressions, we'll see the Vatican art exhibit. And in People and Places, we'll meet Miss Goergia, 107 years young and still going strong.
Almost 70 years ago, Miss Georgia McTeer was taking an afternoon stroll when strains of music first drew her into a Catholic church. Since that day, her devotion to her faith has been the source of strength in her life and an inspiration to others. She says it's her daily prayers that have helped her overcome the obstacles presented by 40 years of blindness.
Oh, yeah, she's got to take care of her, Georgia. And I want you to take care of all the ones that are here today who help celebrate you. Yeah?
Affectionately called Aunt Georgie by everyone she meets, she still loves to share her favorite songs with anyone who will sing along.
I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Approaching her 107th birthday, Aunt Georgie's philosophy of life is simply to trust in God.
We must never be afraid, you know, because wherever we are and whatever we are doing, God's right there with us.
That's right.
And He's not to put any more on us than we can bear.
Aside from being one of her favorite dancing partners, Sister Genevieve Noonan spends time with Aunt Georgie seeking the help and money she needs to stay in her century-old family home.
She's an inspiration to a lot of people, you know, who have left the church, and with her pleading with them, they come back. We've had a lot of people return to the church because of Aunt Georgie.
Now always look up, children. Don't ever look down. Because there's nothing down there to see.
Uh-huh.
And you might step in something.
That's
but
right.
look up. My God lives, you see, and all the angels.
That's right.
And the saints.
And they will take care of you.
Why say, and the Blessed Mother will guide you
Oh, yes.
through all kinds of storms and rain and floods. She's right with you.
She never gets discouraged. She said Christians shouldn't be discouraged.
We have a demonstration, educational thing for the many people that are driving home from offices downtown with signs naming, saying how many people have been killed.
Whenever discussions about the conflict in Central America arise, there are comparisons to Vietnam and how that type of war might be coming closer to home. Or perhaps it is already here, as our next story will show us.
When 4 American churchwomen were killed in El Salvador, that changed the awareness about that situation and also brought a war that's far away, very close to home.
It is the largest coffee-producing country in the world. Volcanoes have made its soil rich. Bountiful crops of sugar and fruit have made business people rich. But El Salvador, only hundreds of miles from the borders of the United States, is poor. Poor because its people are poor.
No podemos ver la lucha o la guerra en El Salvador como un simple conflicto entre el ejército y la guerrilla como guerreristas o como terroristas, sino efectivamente es una lucha de liberación.
He is called Manuel. You can't see his face because he's frightened. Frightened that he might be deported from the United States because he is here illegally. Frightened that he will be killed if he returns to El Salvador.
There's somewhere between 300 and 500,000 Salvadorans in the United States now who've come over a period of time because of the oppression and persecution there in El Salvador.
Reverend John Fife is pastor of Southside United Presbyterian Church in Tucson, Arizona. Manuel and hundreds of other Central American refugees search for sanctuary in churches like this.
It says in Spanish, this is the sanctuary for the oppressed of Central America. And it is an invitation for people who have nowhere else to turn and are usually terrified to come and find the ministry of the church here.
The ministry of the church isn't limited to one denomination or one place. In San Francisco, Joe Tucker, who works for the Social Justice Commission of the Archdiocese of San Francisco, gives the reason why Central American refugees look to churches as sanctuaries.
Central American refugees come to the church when they get here because that's who they see as a source of help. That's because that's the role that the church plays in Central America. It is where people turn to meet their needs, to solve the crisis that they face. And so they've come to the churches in the Bay Area, and the churches have rallied in response.
So they weren't just statistics, or they weren't just a policy issue, or they just weren't a foreign policy issue, or a remnant of a foreign policy issue, but they were real live people who were hurting. This congregation knew that personally. They knew many refugees personally, and so it was not difficult at all to say, we need to extend the ministry of the church to these people, no matter what the government says.
He was saddened by the image of tears with the death of...
Every Thursday, a group of us from many backgrounds and of many ages gather in front of the federal building, which is certainly a symbol of the position of our own government, emphatically not of the American people, but of our government administration at this time. We have a demonstration, educational thing for the many people that are driving home from offices downtown with signs saying how many people have been killed in Central America in recent years. And then for 15 minutes have a prayer vigil where we reflect on the news reports of the week from various sources about the suffering in those lands, and then respond usually with prayers from the Psalms. Afterwards, we share also information of who has arrived recently and generally what we're going to be doing the next week, because there are day-by-day ongoing activities. It's a sharing community thing that's gone on now for over 2 years, every Thursday without fail.
Father Ricardo Alfredo, a Redemptorist priest, is one of several priests and ministers who lead members of their churches in opposing the U.S. government's stand on Salvadoran refugees.
I think all of us see very clearly that if we're going to talk about solidarity with the suffering part of the body of Christ that is Central America, that we as the church have to act, and all the more so when it is our own government that is supplying the arms and the training, and I don't mean just now, but also previously, such as in the Panama Canal Zone, the training for the people that are doing the massacring, that are doing the torturing.
We need to look at the root causes, which come very close to home, because it's our tax dollars that are paying for the guns, that are promoting the war, that forces the refugees to our doorsteps.
Joe Tucker believes that the official U.S. government policy that the Central American refugees coming to the U.S. are only economic refugees seeking a better life is a bad policy. She works hard at helping others understand that the torture and the killing going on in El Salvador make those who flee that country political refugees who should be granted asylum in the U.S. when they ask for it. Jose is one of those refugees. He is an undocumented alien, according to our government. He fled El Salvador because government army troops came to his home, asking for him by name.
Yo salí de El Salvador al igual que el 99% de todos los que estamos aquí, San Francisco, tal vez en los Estados Unidos. Salí debido a la represión, ¿no? Una represión impulsada pues, por el gobierno a través de su aparato militar, ¿no? Por decirlo así, la Guardia Nacional, Policía Nacional y Ejército.
Jose and Manuel and thousands of other refugees find their battles being fought by the Joe Tuckers of the world, church people who believe that when Caesar appears to be wrong, one renders Caesar his due by speaking against him, and renders God his due by being faithful to his commands of love for others.
The question of whether it's legal or illegal ought never to become a subject for the church. Question of whether it's faithful or unfaithful is the only question that the church ought to entertain.
Some would say that Christians in the United States who work to solve the problems of sanctuary for Salvadoran refugees are trying to solve a complex political and religious reality with posters, public statements, and violations of the law. But even in a complex political world, there can be reasonable answers for Salvadorans and their Central American compatriots.
The simplest thing would be to say that the U.S. should stop meddling in the political processes there and allow people within their countries to speak to their needs and to develop a government that can respond to that.
Archbishop Oscar Romero was killed in El Salvador because he fought for justice. The Archbishop's words continue to remind us that we will hear more about El Salvador, its people, and its refugees.
I hope that I'm not just one in a million who doesn't understand all the complications and intricacies of Central America and El Salvador. So I, for one, was very happy to be enlightened tonight on some of the attitudes in El Salvador.
And it represents a classic opportunity for Americans to learn more about the situation and then to make their opinions heard and felt.
Next week on Reel to Reel, you'll learn why farmers across the country are faced with a bitter harvest.
And learn about one of the oldest fraternal organizations in the country, the Knights of Columbus.
We'll meet a large family that always has room for handicapped children.
And Father Jim Young will share some thoughts on peace.
Thank you very much for joining us. Good night and God bless you.
Hope to see you next week. Good night.